Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Real Life, Real Talk Family Life program. It's good to have you this evening. We see that one or two are just trickling. We're hoping to see everyone joining us, many others coming in at this time. Pastor Griffith, welcome. We're in for a great evening this evening. Very interesting conversation indeed. And we are going to tackle the problem. We're going to tackle the problem that has come upon us like a whirlwind, or children or young people with the digital devices. Everyone must have one, and they are very powerful tools. And we want to figure out how we can help our families amid this seemingly pandemic of digital devices in our world today, in our society. So just remember, Dr. Neff is going to be joining us in a few minutes. So I am playing host until she gets here. So bear with me. You know, I'm not accustomed to this. So the usual, remember that you can use the chat to, post your questions. So that if you have a question or a comment, you can use the chat. If you would like to ask a question, be a voice with your voice, use the emojis. They're somewhere here on the screen. Remember that under reactions. So you can, there's one that says raise hand, right down to the bottom. You can raise your hand. If you want to, you agree with something, you can, give a thumbs up. And of course, you can always clap. This is the digital world. We are talking about the digital, navigating the digital world. So those of you who are not too familiar with these devices, we're just trying to help you to get around so that you can use them. So I am going to just ask our panelists to introduce themselves this evening. And so I want to start with Ms. Simone Joseph Olivier. She is from the island of St. Vincent. So I'm going to just highlight a video here so that she can share with you. Welcome, Simone. Lord bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Henry, and thank you for having me on your program tonight. Hi, everyone. I'm Simone Joseph Olivier. As Pastor Henry said, I am from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm currently residing in Guyana, though. And just to give you an idea, especially based on this topic that we're going to look at tonight, my background is in computer science and also innovation technology and the law. I have a lot of passion and interest when it comes to cybercrime, cybersecurity, and especially dealing with the youth in terms of advising them about, choosing their career paths and deciding what path they should choose in their journey when they are thinking about studying and pursuing a career. So tonight, I really look forward to our discussions here. I think we're going to have a great time, and I look forward to participation from those persons who are joining us, whether it's on YouTube or here on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Ms. Carla Bowler coming from the island of Grenada. And Sister Bowler, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this very grand, great panel of very learned persons. I am from the island of Grenada. I have worked as a counselor for many years and as a counseling psychologist. And I love working with young people, helping to guide them and help to keep them on the right path. So I look forward to tonight's presentation and your questions. Let's see if we can help our families or children to do better even when things seem to be getting worse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, our brother Sandy, would you introduce yourself, please, Brother Ricardo?
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Pastor. I'm Ricardo Sandy, an IT specialist with over 10 years of experience with computers and technology. I specialize in the Apple brand's service and repairs.
Thank you. I think Dr. Neff joined us. I'm looking for her name here. I saw her joining us. So Dr. Neff, if you're there, just start taking it over, please.
Yes, I am here, Pastor Henry.
Yes, found you.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Real Talk Family Life, building childproof families one brick at a time. And our topic for today is navigating the digital world in your family. Navigating the digital world in your family. This is not a topic that is pertinent to some, it is pertinent to all, because we are all learning how to navigate the digital world, whether it's on our jobs, in the community. Some part of our life is being, I don't want to say controlled, but certainly being governed by the digital world. And today we are hoping to help our families deal with that intrusion into our lives called the digital world. We are so happy to have our esteemed panelists here with us, and I know they have lots to share with you. So we're going to get started, but before I do, please remember to put your questions in the chat. Use the emojis, raise your hand. We would love to hear from you because we want to deal with topics and questions and issues that are relevant to you and your family life. So we're going to first start with a question that has to deal with this concept of digital natives, digital immigrants, and digital role models. And to address that topic is our esteemed Sister Simone Olivier. And here's my question for you. Mark Prensky in 2001 coined the terms, both of them, digital natives and digital immigrants. Help us understand who are our digital natives and who are our digital immigrants. Because as parents, we have to kind of figure out who's who, right? And what would you say to our parents regarding their digital role? Sister Olivier?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Neff. So before I attempt to answer this question or these questions, I want us to just think for a minute about different languages, whether it's Spanish, French, Dutch, whatever. So in the different countries, you have English-speaking countries, Spanish-speaking countries, etc. So let's assume I'm assuming all of us here are from English-speaking countries. So when we were born, we basically were born into this language of English language. That is what we were born into. That's what we learned. That's what we were taught. For those persons in Spanish-speaking countries, for example, the same applied to them. They were born learning Spanish as their first language, their native language. So if someone from a Spanish-speaking country who never left their country, never spoke or heard even a different language, come to an English-speaking country, of course, they have to start adapting to that country and that language. They have to start learning the new language, learning different ways in saying things that they were not accustomed to, maybe something that they were familiar with. They have some sort of different meaning in another language, and you start learning these changes. And the same applies for someone from an English-speaking country who goes to or try to learn another language. So when we think now as digital natives and digital immigrants, we could apply that same concept. Digital natives were basically born into the era of the digital technology. This is their world. They were born knowing that technology exists. They don't know about the antiquated or the olden things from before in the older generation. That's not what they were born into. That's not what they learned. That's not what they're used to. They were born into the digital world. So they are digital natives because basically everything that they do, they apply it or they use the technology to even get it done. They were raised in a digital media saturated world. And then the digital immigrants are persons who would have had to learn, just like how those persons would have had to learn a new language, because that's not the language they were born into. The digital immigrants basically had to do the same thing. They had to learn the technology, learn how to do things that they were not used to using a technology before. They had to learn how to adapt to this new type of world. So that's a basic difference between both digital natives and digital immigrants. But then how do we now determine who are these people who were born into these different areas, etc.? Now, a lot of times we may hear the term millennials or Generation Z or Gen Z, or even for the older ones, we hear about like Generation X. Now, these persons, well, I want to say these persons, but persons in different eras represent different generations. So generation, let's say Generation X, for example, would have been persons who were born maybe between 1960s and 1980. I mean, it varies like 2 to 4 years higher or lower because different persons have like slight differences when they talk about these generations. But generally, the Generation X would be people between 1960s, 1980s. The millennials, who we basically start calling digital natives, according to the same Mark Prency, these persons were born between the 1980s and 2000s. And those who were born after 2000 were termed or are termed as Gen Z, Generation Z. Now, the digital natives would fit basically between the millennials and the Generation Z persons. So those persons who were born after the 1980s, you're really termed as a millennial, a Generation Z person, or a digital native. That's the technology, the digital world that they have been born into. And that is why we find sometimes that these people operate so much different. They learn different, they prefer learning by, I would say, visual graphics and so forth, while the older generation might prefer the text, the actual typing and the content itself. But let's even use a simple example. Somebody who's a Generation X person born before 1980s might figure, you know what, I need to print everything that I'm going to read. I can't really read this thing on the screen. I'm not used to this. I prefer to have a printed copy, highlight my sections that I think there are no, I want to remember and so forth. You can't tell a millennial or a digital native to be printing copies like that. They would clearly and gladly and comfortably do the same thing using their devices. And that's just a basic difference between, you know, the immigrants and the natives. And now I just want to just go over a little now to the digital, how parents basically can be role models or play a digital role in their children's lives. And we know that nowadays we have parents who are digital natives or they're millennials, and we have those from the older generation. However, the parenting style, because based on what era you're from, may differ. So how can you as a parent who is not a millennial, not a digital native, teach your child who has born into a different era? How are you going to really, strike a balance? You're not used to some of the things your children are doing. How do you help them? I think some of the things that a parent needs to do is just like how in the physical world, you as a parent, you have to be a role model for your children. Then in the digital space and the digital world, you have to adapt that same kind of mentality. And in order for you to do that comfortably, you need to also learn the technology, because you can't be a role model to your child or children if you don't know what they are doing or how they're doing it. You may not be an expert like them or be tech savvy like them, but you should at least learn the basics so you will be able to guide them. And some of the things I think parents should really do in order to be good role models for their children when it comes to the digital world is, and for us to strike a balance in the family, is to really spend some time with your children, because you know they're not accustomed to let's say for example playing games in the yard, running around in the yard and all those things, like how some of us might be used to. They're not accustomed to that, but give them a device, a phone, a tablet, computer, something, and they would be able to do that. So you have to learn as a parent to probably schedule like time, just like how you would schedule time to do your work from your normal 8 to 4 job. You schedule time to do different things, then schedule time to spend time with your family as well. Whether you, I'm gonna take 1 hour, 2 hours every week, or 1 hour every day, or twice a week on weekends, whatever it is, try to find some time to spend with your family and do something that we might term as a digital detox. You know, let's say for example, you say, okay, every Friday night or every Thursday night, we're gonna have dinner together as a family at 7 p.m. At that time, there should be no use of devices around the dinner table. Everybody's devices should be set aside, and you just focus and you use that time to bond while you're eating, to bond as a family. You start asking your children how they have spent their day, if they're having problems in an area, what you can help them with, you know, simple things. And you also can get to know your children's likes and dislikes during that period as well. And as you lead by example, you yourself as a parent need to, when you set ground rules or these kinds of guidelines, you have to follow them as well, because you don't want to say, okay, kids, this is what you're going to do. And then when it's time to do it, okay, you're going to put away your phones at 7 until 8. But 7 and 8, you're still doing work calls, you're still sending email messages, you are still chatting with whether it's a colleague or business partner or your friends. So you have to lead by example if you want to be a good role model. So another way you could also be a good role model is try to be direct with your instructions that you're giving them. Let them understand why they are doing these things, the benefits it would have. And also you would be able to let them know how as a family unit you can bond together just in this short space of time by now using the technology. You could even ask them to help you or to teach you, because some parents don't really know how to use this technology, and their kids could really be of benefit to them and help them, you know, to understand the technology. If you're a techie parent, someone who really knows about the technology, then start putting parental controls on your child's tablets or on their phone, on their devices, so that, you know, they would be protected from going to certain sites, you know. And also you talk about what kind of content is appropriate and what for sharing online, whether it's with friends, etc. What is appropriate to share and what is not appropriate to share. So I think some of those are some basic things that parents can use to you know, be digital role models for their children.
Thank you, Sister Olivia. Okay, so that I understand, I am not a millennial nor Gen X. I am a baby boomer.
You're a baby boomer.
And I'm proud of it, right? So you're saying that I am really a digital immigrant because I was not born into the digital world. I learned the language and I think I'm pretty good at it, but I am not a native, right? So you know, and my children are not even digital natives, you know, but my grandson is a digital native. And he is, gosh, he's so adept at this. Technology is amazing. So what I hear you saying is that even some of the younger parents, the Gen Xers and even some of the Zs are immigrants because they have children who are, and they have children who are born into the country, the digital world as natives. And that it's important for us, if we are dealing with digital natives, to learn the language as best as we could so that we could engage with our children, as well as put in place those protocols to help protect them from this world that's the digital world out there. Is that about right?
Agreed.
Okay. Now, I like
Go
that you
ahead.
said that we should strike a balance, and you talked about setting a scheduling time to detox and to put the devices down and so forth. I like that very much because I grew up, running outside. That's where we played. But I also want to ask you, do you think it's also important for us as digital immigrants and digital role models to schedule digital time with our natives so that they could also feel that that we are part of their world? Oftentimes parents like to tell children what not to do. We did it this way back in the day. When I was, a teenager, I walked 4 miles to school and 4 miles, we like to throw all that at our children. But we don't take the time to live in their world, to walk in their shoes. So I'm wondering if, as well as we are doing the detoxing on one end, isn't it also important for us to engage with them digitally so that we could connect with them on that level as well, so that when we say put the devices down and so forth, they're more inclined to comply because they have the opportunity to live in both worlds with us. What are your thoughts?
I agree completely. I agree completely with that because, and as you said, it's not about do this and do that, because if you keep telling a child or your children, do this, do that, but you're not even trying to understand why they are doing things differently, then it's going to cause a bit of friction between you and your children because they're not used to how you're accustomed to doing things. Your way of doing things is like, it's foreign to them. So spending some time and using that time to learn about the technology that your children use, the application, the programs, the sites that they visit, all these things, you as a parent can learn a lot from them in that case. You can learn a lot from them and you will be in a better position to guide them and to give them advice as to how they should go about doing certain things when they are online. Because we have to remember also that whatever they do, they leave a mark, they leave a footprint, and you want to make sure that the footprint that they're leaving, the digital footprint that they're leaving, is something that when they look back 5-10 years down the road, they could say, okay, I'm happy with what I did. You don't want them not to feel proud, of how they conducted themselves. So I think it's a very good point that even when you schedule time or you think about making time for the digital detox, you should also schedule time and engage with your children and the technology, because you will be able to learn a lot from them as well. And one of the things, Dr. Nev, that I really want to talk about before I forget is, in as much as I mentioned that the digital natives are born after certain era and they were born into the digital age, we still have to be cognizant of the fact that there are not everybody who was born, let's say, as a Generation Z or a millennial is actually a digital native, because there are persons who grow up in poorer countries, poorer era, and they don't have the access to the technology, even though we are living in this world that is so controlled by the technology. There are still a lot of people who don't have access to it. So they may be born as a millennial, but they don't really have to be considered as a native, a digital native. So we should also set that boundary.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the audience because I'm sure someone is burning to ask a question. I don't want to ask questions and take it away from the audience now. So if you are an audience member and you have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask your question, raise your hand, put it in the chat, whatever it would take to indicate to us that you have a question that you would like to ask of the audience, of the panelists. Okay, I don't see any at this point, but I also know that we have some people on YouTube who's watching.
There's a
the program.
Dr. Neff, there's a
Yes.
hand up.
Oh, I see a hand. I see a hand. But there are some people on YouTube watching. Please feel free to pass your questions on. We will certainly attempt to address them. Trevor Benjamin, I see your hand up. Do you have a question for us?
Thank you very much for acknowledging me.
Sure.
I appreciate the information being transmitted by my good friend Simone. But I have a question. What tips can you suggest for parents who are struggling with trying to monitor screen time for our young people? Because that I find is a major challenge. They're hooked on the device and devices. And as parents, we are trying to monitor and kind of direct their screen time. What tips would you suggest? That would
Okay,
be helpful to us.
you must be reading our notes here. That's exactly what's coming up right about now.
I can wait then. I'll wait.
Brother Sandy is about to share that with you. So in this segment, we're going to look at understanding the digital world, looking at screen time and media addiction. So here is my question for Brother Sandy. When it comes to technology, many parents feel at a disadvantage. Children are much more advanced in their understanding of how to use the technology. However, as parents, our job is to train them up in all areas of life. What do you say to parents who are seeking to better understand the role of technology in their homes and how to engage their children in discussions surrounding responsible use and management of technology? For example, what is screen time? And what advice would you give to parents on managing screen time? What advice would you give to parents who believe their children are addicted to media? Brother Sandy, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you,
All right.
Dr. Neff.
Yes.
I'll try my best to answer the questions. I'll take it one at a time. Right? Okay, so firstly, I'd say congratulations to those parents seeking to better understand the role of technology in their homes, as technology has become quite ubiquitous and important to everyday life and our functioning in this modern age. Families need to talk about what healthy technology use looks like. For example, when you hear a startling statistic about technology use, it could be brought up for discussion at the supper table. A child's question about why he or she can't have extended screen time is an opportunity for discussion. Also, talk is not enough. Parents need to model healthy technology use. As difficult as it is for parents, they need to set an example, because we also struggle to use technology in a healthy way. Parents need to set ground rules for ourselves as well as for our children. None of us, whether child or adult, has enough willpower to convince ourselves, often dozens of times a day, to put down the phone or turn off the screen. But we can make decisions over time that will turn into habits. It's the parents' job to set limits in the home. As with most rules and regulations, setting limits can be difficult to implement at first. However, in my experience, the result is much less conflict. To answer the screen time question, what is screen time? I hope I answered that first one. Screen time is the amount of time spent using a device with a screen, such as a smartphone, computer, television, or video game console. The concept is under significant research with related concepts in digital media use and mental health. Studies show that screen time directly impacts child development and mental and physical health. The positive or negative health effects of screen time are influenced by levels of content of exposure. To prevent harmful exposure to screen time, some governments have placed regulations on its usage. Parents could do the same. Some advice that I would give to parents on managing screen time includes, but isn't limited to, setting a good example with your own device use. As children will tend to model their behaviors on you, so if you start reading a book, they may follow you. Talk together about the time they spend on it, by understanding what they're doing and explaining your concerns. agree on an appropriate length of time that they can use the device by putting in place a family agreement to set some boundaries and don't break them. Also, creating screen-free zones at home. Get the whole family to unplug and create screen-free zones at home. And using technology apps to help manage screen time. For example, the Forest app, this is an application that actually exists, enables them to grow a beautiful forest each day they don't use their phone for a set amount of time. And you ask me one last thing, what advice would you give to parents who believe their children are addicted to media? As with any addiction, it's key to identify the signs of addiction quickly and take steps to manage it. Although many people habitually use media, very few are genuinely addicted. To determine if someone is at risk of developing an addiction to media, ask these 6 questions. Do they spend a lot of time thinking about media or planning to use media? Do they feel urges to use media more and more? Do they use media to forget about personal problems? Do they often try to reduce use of media without success? Do they become restless or troubled if unable to use media? Do they use media so much that it has a negative impact on their studies? A yes to more than 3 of these questions may indicate the presence of a media addiction. Like Ms. Olivier talked about, a digital detox, a period of time which someone significantly reduces the time spent using electronic devices such as smartphones or computers could be a wise precaution. This can include simple steps such as turning off sound notifications and only checking media sites once an hour, like YouTube. Other changes can include having periods in the day where there's self-imposed non-screen time, such as during meals or leaving the phone in a separate room at night so as to not disturb sleep. This allows for a restored focus on social interaction in the physical world and reduces dependency on it. Thank you, Dr. Neff.
Thank you so much, Brother Sandy. Oh, wow, that was a lot of great information. I don't want to miss all of it because there's so much important pieces. You mentioned that screen time may have an impact on child development. You talk about it's important to be aware of the content, to be aware of regulations and put in place to help protect our children from extended screen time. You talk about parents being an example to their children, modeling good screen behavior, finding apps that would help us to manage screen time. I'm gonna lean on Sister Bola here for a second, for a few minutes, and see what her thoughts are on this.
Good night, everyone. Now, we were born in a different generation, and screen time was just a little bit of television for maybe a half an hour when that was possible. But now screen time has become the norm. And of course, as was just explained so nicely there, that the children have become so attached to the screen that they seem not to be able to do anything without it. So if they have to get their meals and they can't find their phone, of course, they'll go searching for the phone before they get their food. Or if they have to do maybe schoolwork or whatever it is, it has to be part and parcel of what they are going to do. Otherwise, they are not able to function. So it seems as though the brain has now become wired to the device. So the child is not able to function outside of. So it has become like an addiction, a mental addiction. If you don't have this, you can't do that. So on the psychological side of that, when you have an addiction, it's not something that you can break by yourself. So some of the information that was just shared about having a set time for doing certain things, like having a timetable, I would usually say to parents, so you have screen time. Well, it's school time. Well, now we online, basically because school is online. But at the end of school, the devices should be put away and they do something else. So you have schedules for different things. So somebody's going to help with supper, somebody's going to help to tidy up, somebody's going to maybe put away the washing. So you have different activities to take them away from the screen because they would have already spent most of their day on the screen. So that the brain gets a chance to do something else outside of all those, you know, the connections, kind of break the connections for a little bit, doing something else so that they could function outside of the device.
Thank you, Sister Bola. I hope we answered your question, Brother Trevor. I want to reach out into the audience because I see a familiar name out there that I know is well-versed in the well-versed in the area of psychology and trauma and so forth. And I'm going to reach out to Dr. Roger Samuel, and see if he can add a few thoughts to this as well. There he is, to this as well. Thank you, Dr. Samuel.
Yeah, I was away in the other room, so but I'm so intrigued by what I'm hearing and the importance of how we create that space for balance and a space for communication and a space where our children feel safe enough to share what's on their heart, what's on their mind, and we can, you know, not only manage what they're doing, but create the kind of environment they feel comfortable to talk and to share. So there's great communication because oftentimes sometimes it's just a big distance between us and our children. And like I said earlier, I think I heard the term, was it immigration? Not immigration, we are foreign or some.
Or digital immigrants.
Yes, digital immigrants. So it shows how far removed sometimes we are from our children understanding and what they're exposed to. So being educated in those areas and you know, making ourselves aware of what they're exposed to so we too can relate to it. So I think it's so important for us to create that safe environment. And so I missed part because I was in the other room doing something while I was listening. So I hope I captured some what I've heard, but I'm liking the fact that we are, you know, ensuring that our children and parents strike that balance to understand both sides of the spectrum. Parents understanding the world of their children and trying to understand their parents. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel. Sister Oliver also has something to share. Go ahead.
Yes, good points. I wanted to add something else to Trevor's question about how do you help parents with managing the screen time. So, you know, if you take something away from a child, they're not going, especially something that they love, they're not going to be very happy. It's a given. They're not going to be happy about it. So how about if we try, okay, we take something from you for a period of time, but we are going to give you something else. In that case, maybe you could find out what else, there must be something else that your child is interested in. And that is why it's important to form that bond with your children to find out their likes and dislikes, because it is during this time that you take away their devices or you schedule no screen time, that you can use that opportunity to help them develop another skill, another talent, a hobby, something that they might be interested in that has nothing to do with screen. So that could be an option. And another thing I think as a parent that you could try to help your children to understand or see the health benefits of being away from the screen and away from the devices. Because, you know, the constant looking at screens for hours, it damages your eyes. It even damages the way you sit. Even if you're not sitting properly at your computer, if you don't have a proper desk and try to sit at, you're slouching and all those things, it damages your back, the way how you sit, the way how you even walk when you get up. So all those things are like the health the health aspect of it. So if you help your child to understand how these negative effects that sitting too long in front of a screen can have on their physical health, I think that could be another option or another method you can use to help take away your kids from the screen.
Thank you, thank you. So keep those questions coming. I'm looking in the chat right now. Brother Trevor says his question was answered. He says, the challenges are real in trying to monitor and control teens' screen time. And you are not alone, Brother Benjamin. The challenges are real. There's a question. Let's see. Hi there. Is the oh, this is to me. Okay, no, I can read this. Is the Family Link app that allows you to monitor, lock, set sleep time, location of the device, see the apps they're on, set time limits, and block the app. Sister Kimmy is sharing that there is a family app that would allow you to monitor, lock, set a sleep time, check the location of the device. So if they sneak out at night and take the device into their rooms, you can check the location, see the apps that they're on. That's good. So you can monitor what they're watching and what they're engaged in. Set some time limits that shuts down when that time limit has expired, and also block certain apps. I love it. Thank you, Sister Kimmy. If you can find that for us and we share it on the screen, we would appreciate that tremendously. All right, so keep those questions coming. Let me see. I don't see any raised hands, so I'll go on to the next segment. So here we're going to talk about social media and cyberbullying. Social media and cyberbullying. And I'm going to go back to you, Sister Olivier, for this first question. At what age should children be allowed to have a social presence? And should parents monitor or dictate or address any child who has violated that age restriction?
Okay. So most of our social media platforms have their legal age as 13. You should be 13 and older in order to have an account, for example, on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Instagram, and so forth. You should be at least 13 years old. I think one of the difference is on YouTube. On YouTube, then the age is higher. It should be 18. But we notice sometimes that there are children who are younger. I've had experience where children I know are younger than 13 years old have sent me friend requests on one of these or more than one of these platforms. And I'm like, seriously, why are you sending me a friend request? You should not even be here in the first place. But we know, as I said, these children, they just know this technology so much. They would open up an account and their parents don't even know that they open up an account. How can parents even monitor these things? You have to really be trying from time to time to monitor what your child do on their devices, checking their history to see what sites they were going on to make sure that they have not been doing things that they're not supposed to do. So there are cases, however, I think based on what kind of, let's say, account, whether it's like a page, not so much a personal page, but like a branding page, that there are parents who would open up the account, but the account is really being monitored by them as the parents, even though the child or the children are the ones who are doing the content. In a case like that, it's okay because the parents are the one who are in control of the account itself. But it is really a violation if you are found under 13 years old on one of these platforms. Let's say, for example, someone reports you, it is a violation. And so things like that should not be done. So I think you were asking in the latter part of your question, what should parents do if they find that the children are in violation of these? Well, I guess it would differ from parent to parent. But I think one of the first things that they should do is get the child to shut down the account, to delete it, and help them to understand why at that age, on the 13, they should not even be there in the first place. Because it's a matter of protecting your children. It's not a matter of preventing them from being on the internet, but it's protecting them from a lot of dangers that lurk around in cyberspace. Even though there may be a lot of advantages and a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of threats as well. And you're trying to protect them from some of these things that they're not even, they haven't even seen in their physical life as yet. They are not exposed as yet. So you're trying to prevent them or protect them from getting into such things. So 13 is the legal age for most of them, with the exception of YouTube, 18.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm gonna go, we're gonna come back to you to talk about cyberbullying, but I wanna go to Sister Bola with this next question. One responsibility of parents is to teach their children how to form healthy relationships. However, social media has created an environment through which people are considered friends because they liked or commented on our social media posts. What advice would you give to parents on how to guide and monitor their children's online relationships? How do you suggest they counteract the perception of cyber friendships? And while you're at it, is there a difference between social media friends and real friends, real life friends?
Yes, let's take the last part first. There is a difference between social media friends and real friends. Now, the social media platform has persons on it with names and maybe a photo that you're not even sure if that is the real person, but real friends are flesh and blood persons that you see, you interact with, you speak with, you can touch, you can, you can have a conversation, a real conversation with. So that's it, the first part. So there is the social media friendship where persons are allowed to speak with you and you're not sure who the real person is. Yeah. Real friendships are persons that you know, that you interact with, that you are able to have a conversation with. You can see their facial expressions, etc. But in the social world, it doesn't look like that. So you put up an article, you put up a posting, and you have 300 persons saying they like it and they are your friends. But these are people you have never seen. These are persons that you will never meet. And maybe if you do, you'd be surprised that the person you thought it was isn't. Just recently, I was to help you answer the question. I was looking at this show where persons are in a group, but they are posing as somebody else. So you believe that the person is an 18-year-old. The person was a 50-something-year-old. You had to be guessing, is that the real person? So sometimes when children get online and they send friend requests and all of these people answer, these are not real friends. Some of them could be predators lurking in the background and trying to woo them along. So as parents, we are helping children to cultivate relationships. They must know the person. Is the person a male? Is the person a female? Is the person an older person? Is it a younger person? Is it somebody that you really want to get close to? What kind of connectedness do you have to the person? Do you want to talk with that person every day, or every time you put up something, the person like it, so you believe that the person like you, and therefore you need to keep that connectedness? What about the communication? The one-line sentences that you write, is that really communication? Because with a real friend, you have a real conversation. Person asks you a question, you give a full answer, you give an explanation, so you are building communication, your communication skills. But when you have friends online, you are not able to build that skill. Also, the emotions. how do you feel about the person? How does the person feel about you? Is the feeling real? When I am speaking to you and I watch your face, like I notice Dr. Neff is nodding for approval, depending on what I say. So I know she's a real person and she's following my conversation. But there is a still picture on the screen. I don't know if the person behind that still picture is the real person. And if what I am saying to the person is really what has to be said, or what the person is saying to me is really what has to be said. So the physical part of the friendship is lost online. And the physical part of the friendship is what really builds the relationship. So we have some distorted self-images because I am not sure who you are and you are not sure who I am. So it's very difficult to do a reality check person because all you know is what the person tells you, but is it true? Is it real? Can I take it for granted that what you're saying is really so? You know? So, and the final point on that is it's very difficult to make a reasoned kind of judgment on who I am speaking with.
Yes.
Speaking with me or to me. Because what or who I am thinking just, so parents, I have to be very careful. And we have heard a lot of the monitoring. I know if you're not very tech savvy, it's very difficult to monitor because when they know what to touch, so they're doing some schoolwork and you come around, the screen goes from chatting with a friend back onto schoolwork, and then you go on and they navigate right back to where they were. So it's very difficult, except you know, and then when you come around, you know what to touch to see exactly what they were doing. So I mean, it's really a challenge, but we have to speak. We have to speak with them. We have to talk with them. We have to reason with them. We have to explain to them that yes, it can be a good tool, but also it can have its own dangers. And we have to be mindful of that.
That is awesome. Thank you, Sister Bola. Boy, I tell you, these kids are sneaky and smart. I mean, you can't fault their intelligence. I mean, they are intelligent creatures, but we have to kind of keep up with them, right? We have to stay abreast of what's going on so we can truly monitor and parent them. Thank you so much for that. I want to go to the chat, and I see that Yolanda has posted information on iPhone and has screen time parent sharing capabilities that she uses on her 14-year-old. There is also a link placed there for you. So if you click on that link or copy and paste that link so you can use it. There's another link on how to see screen time for other Apple products. Sister Kimmy posted the link that she mentioned earlier, where you can really monitor all those various aspects of your child's screen time. And here's a question that's coming from one of our YouTube participants. And this comes from Emma Jackson. The question is, my older daughter opened her Facebook account at 15. We got her to close it. She's now 18 and has reopened it. But however, being a native, she is using it for business, alas. This is good because now she's learning how to be a producer, not just a consumer, but a producer, using it for business. Real Talk, love it. Here's a comment. Real Talk, love it to continue to speak on this topic. It's a good topic. Thank you so much from YouTube. All right, here's another question. My 22-year-old son from Sister McCain. My 22-year-old son had a question for me last night, so he texted me in the same house, right? I decided to speak his language, so I responded with an emoji. He put down his phone and came and spoke with me in person instead. Boy, I guess he wasn't getting the answer he wanted. He didn't like the fact that I knew the language. Isn't that something? We are, as parents, should be informed about how informed and know the lingo. So she used his language. He didn't like the fact that she knew it. So he came and he came and used her language instead. You know, there are different ways to reach them. And that was a great way of reaching him and getting him to come to your mountain instead of you having to go to his. Thank you for sharing that, Maria. All right, so let me go to the section on bullying, cyberbullying. And this is for Sister Olivier. What is cyberbullying? What are the effects of cyberbullying? And what advice do you have for parents of children who are bullied, as well as to parents of children who are the cyberbullies?
Okay. So we know sometimes, but even in our days, who are the older generation, we would have, because in those olden times, we didn't have cyberbullying. We had just bullying. You know, you go to school and somebody comes, I'm going to meet you after school at 3 o'clock and this is what I'm going to do. Or they threaten you to do something to you, or they say something bad about you, or negative, or they make you feel so scared of them by maybe because they are bigger than you are, or they're stronger. You know, they make you feel a little unsafe and so forth. That's bullying in its physical sense. Think about that now being converted to the digital space, the virtual space, where you're not really doing it in person, but you're doing it online. So you're doing the same types of or similar type of bullying, but this time you're actually using your digital devices to do it. So you use your cell phone, your computers, your tablets, you go on the internet and maybe chat rooms or in open forum, and you do the same thing to somebody else. You don't even have to know who they are. And you could send a text message, you could use the different applications on different platforms, even on social media. And you could use these as a form of bullying someone. And that's what we really term as cyberbullying, using the electronic communication to bully a person, basically sending them messages of threatening messages or messages to intimidate them. That's what we call cyberbullying. Now, the most common places that we would find cyberbullying are on social platforms. So like on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all those platforms, you would find a lot of cyberbullying happening. And whether it's by a direct message or through an online chat over the internet, it happens. There are even some persons who are maybe like the older persons, the older children, I would say, they could even use email and use that as a form of threatening someone else. And those persons who love to play games online, in the online gaming community, there are a lot of cyberbullying as well, because it's like you don't even want somebody to be ahead of you in a game or better than you or so forth. Then you start sending threats. So all these are forms or platforms where cyberbullying takes place. What are the effects of cyberbullying? It's so sad that cyberbullying has really gotten persons to reach the point where they would take their own lives. You know, suicide, it is really, really sad. Even talking about it, it makes me feel so sad, because when you threaten someone to the point where they have to consider that they are not good enough, they feel like if they have low self-esteem, they are worthless. Then they start having anxiety, panic attacks. They start getting depressed. When you notice your children start being withdrawn, isolating themselves, for example, and just staying in their room all the time, they don't even want to come out to even talk with their parents or even say hi to a friend. When you see they start behaving a bit awkward, they don't know how to socialize with someone else. When you see they start losing interest in things that they once used to love, but they have no interest in them anymore, when they start losing their concentration and their focus, when their grades start dropping, they have no desire to even go to class, to go to school. Make it worse now that we're having a lot of online classes. They don't even want to go to that space because that space is a reminder of where they are feeling unsafe. Right. They're feeling low, where they're feeling like, you know, they don't worth anything. They might get to the point where they can't sleep properly. They might even get to the extreme of using drugs and alcohol. When you start noticing your children beginning to get upset and angry for every little thing, silly things, then as a parent or as parents, you have to pay attention to all these things because there are signs that your child is being bullied. Yeah. And there are signs that they are being treated or threatened and they are uncomfortable. And as a parent, you have to be with your eyes wide open looking for these things and get to the point where you can talk to your children about what is happening. What I would advise parents of children who are bullied, who are being bullied, cyberbullied, parents should be try to be as open as possible with their children. You have to help your children to get to the point where they are comfortable to come to you, because if they're not comfortable to talk to you or even another adult in your home, they're going to take all these emotions, keep them up inside, and then it will lead to something that maybe will sad in the end, like suicide or using drugs and those things. So you have to be open to listen to your children and support them. Yes. Let them know, you know what, I am here for you. It doesn't matter what you're going through. You can always count on me that I am going to listen to you and I'm going to support you in any way. They have to feel that their home and their guardians and parents are the people who they are safest around. You have to validate their worth as a parent. Let them know that they're special. Help them to understand that the problem is not them who are being bullied. The problem is with those persons who are bullying them, because we find that a lot of persons who bully others, they do it because of some issue or some problems that they're even having in their homes, which brings me to the next part, where the advice for parents whose children are the ones who are bullying others. Those parents need to let their children realize that home is a safe place, and they need to be comfortable, as I was saying before, to talk to their parents. And I think one of the most important thing is, as parents, in that case, in that scenario, where the children are the ones who are bullying others, the parents should really evaluate themselves in their home in terms of their behavior. Ask yourself, what kind of example, what kind of behavior am I showing my children when we are at home? Are you screaming down to the other siblings or even to your spouse when you're talking to them? Are you shouting at them? Are you threatening them? How do you resolve issues, disagreements, all those things? Because your children are looking at you and they're going to pattern your behavior. So if your behavior is one that is similar to threatening somebody when you can't get what you want or they're in agreement with you, then you resort to threats and calling people ill names and making them feel unworthy. I mean, those are the things that the children are seeing. So when they get to a space where they are with their friends or with their colleagues, their buddies, and they realize they are not getting the attention that they want, or they are not getting from you what they're asking for, they're going to react in that similar manner, threatening others. And because that is what they're seeing in their homes. Yeah. That is what they're seeing. I mean, this problem, my mom or my dad or my older brother or sister resolve this problem like this, so this is what I'm going to do as well. It's not the best way to do it. So parents should really aim to set a very good example in their homes so that their children could follow when it comes to that.
Thank you, Sister Olivier. Oh my goodness. And this is certainly an area of concern for many parents and for many children. And it's sad that so many kids are suffering. You know, it becomes a traumatic experience and they're suffering because of being bullied. And here's the thing, not that it's any one is any better than the other. When they bully you physically, the audience is small. But think about cyberbullying, and this is why it affects these children so tremendously. When you cyberbully a child, the audience is wide. You go on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and you bully someone, all of your friends and their friends and their friends and other people's friends are seeing this. And that is why it's so traumatic for these children who are being bullied, because now they feel and they know, in a sense, that the whole world is watching this, is viewing them in that negative light, and they just feel that there's no place for them in this world anymore. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. I'm looking in the chat. How do you teach the child the difference or to know that this is bullying? How do you teach them that the cyberbullying is bullying? As you mentioned, the games, they can think it's just fun and not take it seriously and not talk about it and maybe even start doing it themselves and end up being the bully, and the cycle continues. It happened to me when I was younger, and I'm a little older now, I'll do it to someone else, you know, and the cycle continues. So that's a really good question, Sister Kimmy. Any thoughts on that? Sister Olivier or Sister Bola? How do you teach a child that this is not a game? You know, and how do you break that cycle of bullying?
Well, I would say the action taken for the reaction for the action will determine whether or not it is bullying. So somebody says something to you that you don't like, and you react to it in a distasteful manner, and then you try to get back at the person by saying something to that person that may not necessarily be true, but it's also very distasteful, and the cycle, as you just said, continues. So we have to teach children how to manage their emotions. So even if somebody says something to you that you don't particularly like, or it's not necessarily true, the way to deal with it is not to get back at the person by saying something equally nasty. To make two wrongs will not make it right. Okay, so
That's good.
being a victim of cyberbullying and trying to bully the person who is bullying you only makes the story spread some more. And then as it continues to spread, other persons will add to it and make the story worse. And there is something that we like to remind the students, that things that you put up online, if you touch the delete button, it only hides it from you. It doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So later on, the forensic people could come back and look at it and see exactly what you said you didn't say. So that's another area that we have to remind them. I remember years ago when computers just came and I was trying to learn, one of my sons says, "Mommy, there is nothing on this computer called delete. So anything you don't want up there, don't put it, because you will not see it, but somebody else will still see it." You know, sometimes the button says delete for everyone. Sometimes I wonder who are you really deleting it from. So that's another area that we have to remind the children about, because psychologically, it does take a toll on you. And then when everybody else sees it and then they start telling you about it, "Oh, you know, I saw this about you online, and I saw somebody write up this about you online." And then of course it gets under your skin, and now the bullying gets worse. So one way we can deal with it is to say, okay, person said that, you may want to respond by saying, this is not true, or please do not continue with it, and just leave it. Because when you say more about it, it just keeps the story flying through the clouds, as we say. Everything now is in the clouds, and it goes flying to the clouds. So like the Bible says, a soft answer turneth away wrath. So sometimes you just ignore it, even if it's hurting you, but you ignore it, because after you ignore it, it dies a natural death.
Thank you so much. You made some excellent points. I want to touch on two of them. I'll do the last one first. You know, we have to teach our children kindness. You know, that is one thing I find that's lacking in today's society. We're not teaching our children how to be kind, how to be civil, how to be mindful of others' feelings, how to practice the golden rule, you know. So that's one. And the other one you said that I thought was really, really impactful was the fact that everything you put online has a date and time stamp. Everything is a date and time stamp. You can always go back. The forensic, cyber forensic people can go back and find it, and it's not lost. It's not gone. It's in the cloud, floating around, but it's there. And I like the advice you got from your son. If you don't want to have to delete it, do not put it up there. Because once you put it out there, it is out there. Somebody will find it.
Right.
And the negativity and the meanness and so forth only grows and blossoms the more you give credence to it. So yes, you're right. Say nothing, even though it hurts, because if you put a media response, then it continues the conversation. It keeps that conversation alive, and you want to be very careful about that. I'm going to come back to you, but I want to look and see if there's anything in the chat first. I am an alien. This is from Pastor Henry. I am an alien from outer space to the digital world, he says, but I know a scam when I see one. Do you have advice for individuals who fall for letters offering lots of money? And I'm going to add get rich schemes on that too. I usually respond, he says, to these mails this way. Dear, picture of a donkey, person's name, hope I am not bullying. Okay, Sister Olivia, I'm going to throw that one in your court.
Yes. Because basically you're telling the person you're a donkey if you show them that picture. And who is going to appreciate that they are being referred to an image of a donkey? Yes, it is. I like the question that, is it Kimmy, I think, posted in the chat there?
Yes.
And, how can you
know the difference?
How do you teach your child the difference between the bullying? And then Sister Bola was saying sometimes you just have to let them know, okay, you're not comfortable with this, and you just move on. So it's basically your reaction. But I'm thinking sometimes it's not always that easy, especially for teenagers, for children, and when they're struggling with self-worth. You know, it's not going to be easy for that child or those children to just walk away and just put a deafening ear to that and say, okay, I can't be bothered with them, and they just move on. For some children, they are strong enough and they can do that. For others, they take these things so much, especially if it's coming from persons who they want to be friends with, who they want to hang out in or be a part of their group. And then they are being faced with these kinds of, whether it's name calling or in this, like the person who talk about the alien, the donkey, whether everyone is not comfortable enough to just walk away. How do you help those children who are not strong enough to walk away?
That's an excellent point. And this leads us, it's a great segue into the final section that looks at digital media and mental health. And I'm going to ask Ms. Sister Bola to first respond to this question, but I want to ask Dr. Samuel to hold on and come in after she does with your thoughts on it. And here's the question. How does digital media influence mental health? And in parentheses, I have self-perception, isolation, suicidal tendencies. How does digital media influence our mental health?
Rightly put, at that age, the age we are talking about, the children want to form relationships. They want to be part of a group. And sometimes the very group that they want to be part of is the ones who are trying to keep them out by saying negative things about them or to them. Now, mentally, all of us like to feel good. So it's part of our emotion. It's something that we would like to have. So as I said earlier, it may not always be easy to walk away, but it might be the best option, since if you keep with it, it may just make it worse. So if you suspect that by looking at your child or listening to the conversation, because you can be, somewhere nearby and a conversation is going, or maybe they're writing and you can kind of look in and see what's happening, you may want to ask a question after the conversation. What's happening there? I noticed you didn't look too happy. Is something going on? Would you like to tell me about it? Can we talk about it? At first, they would not be eager and keen to tell you what it is that's happening.
Yeah.
You throw out the question and you say, when you're ready to speak, I am here for you. Tell me what's happening so we can walk through this together.
Right.
That will open the door. So, mommy, you didn't hear this, or look at what is being said or whatever. And as an adult, you would better now be able to guide what the response should be or how it should be treated. Because if you keep up the conversation and it becomes so entrenched in your psyche, that's when the other parts of it come in, the low self-esteem, the anxieties, the withdrawals, and all of the symptoms of that mental strain takes over.
Yes.
Always good to find out what's happening in your child's life. Find out how are things going. How are your classes? Is everything okay? What happened today? Would we like to talk about it? I find sometimes as parents, we say they are moody, so we leave them in their moods. And maybe not really find out what is causing the change of the mood. Just now you are quite happy. What happened? Somebody said something to you, or is something happening that you think I need to know about, instead of just allowing them to simmer in the mood. They're very difficult. You can't talk to them. They don't respond. Sometimes you speak, they respond, but if you're not paying attention, you don't see that they did shake their head or, give you some kind of non-verbal that you're not looking for. So we know at this developmental stage what is going on with them. It's acceptance they're looking for, and they're not getting the kind of acceptance that they are expecting, maybe from their peers, from persons who they want to be friends with. It's time that you step in and have a conversation. We hear a child commit suicide and you say, well, the child was okay. No, the child was not okay. There was flag flying that we did not pay attention to. As parents, we need to pay attention. Once the mood changes, something is happening. It's time to ask a question. And don't demand the answer, just ask the question. Is everything okay? Is there something you want us to talk about? What's happening with you? Why, or maybe not so much the why, because they don't really like the why questions, but the what questions, the how questions, the when. When did this mood change? How come I didn't notice when your mood changed? and they would realize that you are paying attention.
Oh.
So you now would be able to build a relationship with your teen so that they can feel free to talk with you. So don't just leave them to wobble in the mood because you believe that they're supposed to be moody. They're supposed to be happy. They're supposed to be smiling. They're supposed to be taking part in what is happening. So anytime you notice a change, the withdrawals, as I said, the anxieties, it's time to start asking a question. What is happening here? Okay.
Awesome, awesome. You know, in the world of trauma, we're taught, don't ask the child, what's wrong with you? You know, we tend to ask, what's wrong with you? Why are you so moody? What's wrong with you? Why is your face like that? What's wrong with you? Why you want to be, you know, alone? You know, that in itself, that what's wrong with you question puts them into a defensive mode, right? Because it's as though you're judging them. You're saying something's wrong with them. But instead you ask, what happened? You know, what's going on? You know,
Right.
tell me about it. And if you know your child, if you know that your child will not immediately respond to that question, sometimes it's just about going and sitting in their room, you know, laying on their bed, reading, just your presence, being present with them opens up that opportunity for conversation. You don't have to push because sometimes it's within their time. When they're ready, they'll talk. But if you keep pushing, they may never talk. But you have to know how to ask those questions. And sometimes, again, it's just being around them, just being present, just making sure that they can feel your presence and know that, hey, you know, maybe I should ask. Maybe I should say this, you know. So there are so many ways in which we should address this. Now I'm going to, Dr. Samuel, come on in, because I know you have some expertise in this area as well.
Hello. Yes, some studies have shown a heavily dependence on social media, a great increase in depression, anxiety, loneliness, self-harm, and even suicidal thoughts, because social media sometimes promote experiences such as inadequacies in your life or in appearances. So because most people depend on social media, they mimic some of the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you also have toxic masculinity and a false model of how you should be and how you should live. And that then affects your thoughts, your feelings, and how you relate to others, how you feel about yourself. So there has to be a healthy understanding as to how you use it, but at the same time, not become dependent, you know, for your development. You know, education is fine, but you need, you know, relationships, and you need a space in which you can share your thoughts and your feelings, you know, because things happen at time that affects your normal ability to manage life stressors. And so when you have this overload of dependence on social media, it changes your thoughts, you know, your mood, and you're making you feel more isolated. So there are a different impact that it can have on our lives. So there's a great need for us to be educated as to how we should use that and understand our mental health matters, taking care of ourselves matters, being kind to ourselves matters, and then being kind to others matters. And so, you know, technology is great, but sometimes it doesn't always teach us how to remedy our emotional and relational challenges.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel. I have one last question that comes from YouTube, and I'm going to send this question to Brother Sandy. And for the rest of the panelists, I'm going to ask you to get your final thoughts together. All right. You'll each have 3 seconds to give those final thoughts. Hopefully we can close on time. So Brother Sandy, here's the question for you. What can be recommended to parents to be more proactive to close the technology gap between them and their children? What would you recommend to parents to close that technology gap between them and their children?
I think a simple way could be them just spending time with them, even when they're using the technology. So they could just learn just by observing. I think that's
And
a
it never
simple
hurts to ask, right? It never hurts. You know, if there's nothing more pleasing to a kid for you to ask them, how do you do this? How do you work this? Show me this. You know, and they'll get on the computer and hit buttons so fast you're not going to know what they hit. But just the act of asking them to teach you something, you know, helps with closing of that gap. So thank you so much, Brother Sandy. I think that's really good. All right, so I want final thoughts from the panelists. I am going to start with Sister Olivier and move through the list so we can get our final thoughts in. You have 3 seconds to give your final thoughts.
So I would just like to encourage parents and children to use the technology. It is something that could be very good. We just also have to learn what are the threats and dangers of the virtual space and find a way to avoid getting into the trap or going down that hole where there are lots of things that we have to always be running away from or hiding from our kids. Let their children learn to produce content instead of always consuming someone else's content.
Yes.
I think when we start looking at the positives more than the negatives, teaching your children the positives of the technology, what it could really do for us in terms of advancement, development, what we could really put out there, then they would be more interested in doing the good things rather than trying to investigate and be curious about things that they're not supposed to be looking at, etc. So I just want to encourage everyone, use the technology. It is there for us. It's just how we use it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Bola.
Yes, I would say teach our children to accept themselves and not use the technology to gain social acceptance. So if you accept yourself for who you are, then the technology should help you and not hinder you in becoming the kind of person that you want to be. Your standard will not be the technology standard, but you have your own standards. It's like, for example, you dress in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror and you know you're looking good. And as you step out of the door, somebody says, "Wow, Dr. Neff, you look really nice today." But instead of saying, "Oh yes, thank you very much," you say, "No, you know, that's an old top I had from a long time."
Yeah.
So you kill the spirit of the day.
Right.
All you have to say is, "Oh, thank you very much," because you already knew that the mirror told you you were looking good. So we have to teach our children to accept themselves for who they are and do not let the technology set the standards. So then we'll have less of the emotional dropouts and the anxieties and whatever, because you know what's there is just put there for you to use, but it doesn't set the standard for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Bola. Brother Sandy?
Oh, yes, still here.
Final thoughts?
Well, children are under God's care, and you know, I think that at the end of the day, we should just remember to thank God and pray for them, because you know it's up to what God wants to do with them at the end of the day. That's all.
Thank you, Brother Sandy. Thank you, panelists, for being here tonight, sharing, such wonderful words of wisdom and great nuggets to the attendees, to the participants in Real Talk Family Life. You guys brought some tremendous information to our families, and we really appreciate you giving up your time to do so. At this time, I'd like to hand back over to our host, Pastor Anthony Henry, for his final words and to close us out.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Neff. Greatly appreciate the panelists, their input, And thank you very much, team, for sharing. Dr. Neff, thank you for hosting the program. Tremendous program. The program is available on YouTube. Sometimes it takes about 12 hours or so to fully upload, but it's there on our Faith Tabernacle St. James channel, so that you just tune into the chat. You just go to the YouTube, you search for Faith Tabernacle St. James, you'd find the video. So if you miss something, you can always play back the video. Great information, and I hope that many of our children will, many of our parents will would have benefited from the program this evening. At Faith Tabernacle, we are pressing ahead with the digital world. And so over the last 8 weeks or so, we have been doing short devotionals every morning that we share with you to get your day right. We know it's a busy time for everybody, and we think that if we can just share a word in the morning, get you started, hopefully, that will set you in the right mood to face the challenges that are before you. So if you have not been receiving those videos and you would like to receive them, just leave your WhatsApp number in the chat. We will take them. We'll take that number and we will put you on our mailing list and send you our videos every morning. And thank you again. We will be back next week, next 2 weeks, and we have another very interesting program where we will be discussing the whole idea of mental health and some of the things that we need to look for. So it would be a follow-on from this program into that particular area where we help, we get people to help our listeners. What are the things that you need to be looking for, especially in these times, that can be a problem with mental health in our society, in our families. So the Lord bless you, and panelists, Simone, Sister Bola, Dr. Neff, everyone, Brother Sandy, thank you very much, and the Lord bless you all. Everybody, have a wonderful evening, and see you soon sometime.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Samuel, for jumping in.
Thank you very much.
It was my